The new official trailer for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey was released the other day, and if you watched my review and breakdown of the trailer, you'll know that I thought it was an excellent new showcase of what the director is bringing to the big screen. I discussed a lot of the new footage in that video, but I thought I'd now go into some of the smaller details that I picked out afterwards, ones that are integrally linked to Homer's epic poem. There will be spoilers and details from Homer's The Odyssey in this video, so if you haven't read it, then I would recommend watching one of my other videos on the new trailer. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey film, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into some of the details you might have missed in the new trailer for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So starting with some of the details surrounding Matt Damon's Odysseus in the new trailer, it opens by grounding us firmly in Odysseus' long, painful detour on Ogygia. And director Christopher Nolan seems to be playing with the emotional tension of that story beat rather than simply recreating it. In Homer's poem, Calypso keeps Odysseus on her island for 7 years, driven by a possessive love that blurs the lines between affection and imprisonment. She offers him immortality, comfort, even a life free from suffering, yet he longs only for home. The trailer gives us shots that appear to be from that same location as the official still of Odysseus standing beside Zendaya's Athena. Her character doesn't appear in the trailer, but with it being the same location and Odysseus wearing the same clothing, it suggests that Nolan might be changing certain aspects in his adaptation. When Odysseus later says, "Help me go home," he's speaking to someone just out of the frame, and I would not be surprised if this was actually Athena. So if Nolan places Athena on Ogygia, that's a deviation from the poem, as in Homer's story, Zeus sends Hermes to command Calypso to release Odysseus. But if Athena is already there, Nolan may be using her character through divine intervention. It would streamline the narrative while reinforcing Athena's role as Odysseus' protector, a relationship that defines the entire epic. Another intriguing detail surrounding the moments with Odysseus that I picked up on was the small carved figurine that Odysseus studies, one that looks like the Palladium, the sacred statue of Athena that supposedly guaranteed Troy's safety. In myth, Odysseus and Diomedes steal it during a mission, an act that directly contributes to Troy's downfall. Another thing to note regarding this is that critics and influencers were sent secret packages for the new Odyssey movie, and each one contained copies of this figurine, so it is being used as a central promotional tie-in for the overall narrative. If this object is indeed the Palladium, Nolan may be using it as a symbolic reminder of Odysseus' complicated relationship with the gods, as he is both their instrument and their transgressor. It also subtly ties the film's present to the Trojan War flashbacks, which we know Nolan will incorporate, or at least in the fall of Troy. And speaking of the fall of Troy, there is a shot towards the very end of the new trailer that echoes the teaser poster of the film, featuring the decapitation of a statue, which is believed to be that of Athena. So there are multiple things linked to that, but it is of different contexts due to the passing of time. It's essentially being used as a contrast of Odysseus' piety with Ajax's offense at the temple of Athena in Troy. The trailer further gives us a brief tender moment in the new footage as we see Odysseus with his dog Argos. In the epic poem, Argos is the first living being to recognize Odysseus after 20 years, even when he's disguised as a beggar. In the poem, the dog wags his tail, lowers his ears, and dies moments later, being a quiet, devastating symbol of loyalty, outlasting time itself. Nolan seems to be leaning into that emotional punch in his film, as there's a second shot of Damon's character looking down at his aging dog. So it looks like this important moment in the poem is going to be used as a thematic anchor in the film, showing the cost of absence, the erosion of time, and the small personal tragedies that make Odysseus' homecoming so powerful. Moving on, when it comes to the Ithaca sequences in the new trailer, we get a few other details that are interesting callbacks to Homer's poem. They are packed with political tension and domestic unease, with Robert Pattinson's Antinous immediately standing out in all of this. In the poem, Antinous is the most arrogant and violent of the suitors, as he's entitled, manipulative, and utterly convinced that Odysseus is dead. Pattinson plays him with a deceptive charm, which is exactly what makes the character dangerous. His threats towards Telemachus feel casual, almost conversational, which is far more unsettling than a loud and theatrical villain. The trailer shows him talking to Anne Hathaway's Penelope, insisting that Ithaca needs a new king, and the shot of her character reveals an easy-to-miss detail. Penelope's loom sits behind her, half-woven, and if you've read Homer's story, you'll know that Penelope delays choosing a suitor by weaving a shroud for Laertes by day and secretly unravelling it at night. So Nolan seems to be using the loom as a visual shorthand for Penelope's quiet resistance. Within the Ithaca scenes, we also get our first look at Eumaeus, played by John Leguizamo, who appears in a tense exchange with Telemachus. Eumaeus is one of the few characters in the epic who remains unwaveringly loyal to Odysseus, and the trailer hints at his protective role. There's a shot of him being attacked by a suitor, which is likely Corey Hawkins as Eurymachus, a major antagonist amongst them. Eurymachus manipulates the household from the inside as he's carrying on a secret affair with Melantho, played by Mia Goth in the film, as she's one of the most loyal members of Odysseus' household, being a maidservant raised by Penelope. Instead of honouring that trust, Melantho throws her lot in with the suitors, using her position to undermine the very people who sheltered her. And Eurymachus, one of the boldest, most entitled suitors, angling for Penelope's hand and Odysseus' throne, exploits that betrayal to tighten the suitor's grip on the entire palace. It's a quiet but devastating act of treachery that shows how deeply the rot has spread inside Ithaca long before Odysseus walks through the door. Coming back to Leguizamo's Eumaeus though, we see the character talking to Odysseus about vengeance. In the Odyssey poem, Eumaeus is attacked by the suitors, being abused and threatened, while escorting the disguised Odysseus back to his palace. And this is before he knows for certain that Odysseus has returned. While Eumaeus is with Odysseus, disguised as the beggar within his heart, he talks of his loyalty to his absent master, but he does not recognize him. Eumaeus only learns the truth shortly before the final fight with the suitors, when Odysseus reveals his scar to him outside the main hall to secure their help in the fight. So based on the footage of him talking to Eumaeus in the new trailer, it will be interesting to see how Damon's character appears as the beggar to characters like Eumaeus when we get to that part of the film. Furthermore, the new trailer also hints at the suitor's darkest plot, and that is the plan to murder Telemachus. In Homer's narrative, Antinous and Eurymachus conspire to ambush him at sea, hoping to eliminate the rightful heir before Odysseus can return. Nolan seems to be foregrounding this threat, showing Antinous taunting Telemachus about waiting for a dad he never knew. It's the emotional reality of the story, as Telemachus has grown up with only stories of his father, and the suitors exploit that vulnerability to undermine him. So as a whole, these Ithaca scenes in the footage suggest that the film will treat the political drama at home with as much weight as the mythic journey away from home with Odysseus. Finally, I wanted to touch on some of the other moments featured in this new trailer, and primarily those that feature both the Underworld and the different mythical creatures. One of the most striking sequences in the trailer is the descent into the Underworld, where we finally see Elliot Page's character. Early speculation suggested that Page might be playing Tiresias, but the trailer confirms that James Remar is taking on the role of the blind prophet. We do see him in a shot following the one of Page's character. So that leaves questions over who Page is playing. There's been this weird rumour online that he's playing the ghost of Achilles, and while that's not completely off the table, that rumour has come from pretty much nowhere, so I highly doubt that that is true. The most compelling possibility though is Elpenor. In the poem, Elpenor is a young crewman who dies tragically and almost absurdly, falling from a roof after drinking too much. Yet he becomes the first ghost that Odysseus encounters in the Underworld, begging for a proper burial so that his spirit can rest. Elliot Page's question in the trailer of who's looking after your wife and son fits perfectly with Elpenor's role as a reminder of the human cost of Odysseus' journey. He represents the ordinary men swept up in a hero's story, the ones whose names rarely survive the telling. So I now think that it's very likely that this is who Page is actually playing. Moving on to the Cave of Polyphemus, we get a few new shots that suggest Nolan's interpretation of the Cyclops. We see a shot of the Cyclops towering above treetops, then one of him lifting one of Odysseus' men with one hand, and also a shot of him pulling a man into the shadows, presumably to eat them. The design of the Cyclops, with his twisted eye and nose, leans into a grounded, almost geological aesthetic, and his skin looks like weathered stone. The encounter with the Cyclops is pivotal in the epic poem because Odysseus' clever plot to escape leads to the wrath of Poseidon. And the trailer reinforces that connection with the very opening shot featuring Odysseus alone on a shattered raft, which suggests divine punishment, the aftermath of a storm sent by the sea god himself. So even without showing Poseidon in the footage, Nolan is conveying his presence through the shots of violent waves and the isolation of the hero at the very start. We also get a glimpse of the Lestrygonians in the trailer, the giant armoured cannibals who ambush Odysseus' fleet. The trailer shows them charging through a forest in silver armour, their size exaggerated just enough to feel mythic without breaking Nolan's grounded aesthetic. This sequence is one of the darkest in Homer's poem, as the Lestrygonians destroy nearly every ship that Odysseus has left. There's also another iconic moment featured that appears when Odysseus is tied to the mast of his ship in a later shot. This is a brief tease of the encounter with the sirens, and if you know that moment from Homer's poem, you'll know that Odysseus orders his men to bind him so that he can hear the siren song without succumbing to it. It'll be interesting to see how the director visually portrays the sirens in the film, and it's cool that we get a confirmation of that moment through this quick shot. And then finally, the trailer also teases the deadly strait between both Scylla and Charybdis. We see the whirlpool of Charybdis forming, a spiraling vortex that threatens to swallow the entire ship. Following this, in a blink and you miss it shot, Scylla's monstrous form snatches a sailor straight through the sail. In the poem, Odysseus must choose which monster to face, knowing that he will lose men either way. Odysseus decides to sail closer to the six-headed monster Scylla, rather than risking the entire ship to the Charybdis whirlpool. Following Circe's advice, he consciously chooses to sacrifice 6 men to ensure the survival of his ship and the rest of his crew. It's one of the most morally wrenching decisions in the entire epic, and Nolan seems to be capturing that chaos with a kind of visceral energy. But that was my video discussing some of the smaller details and things you might have missed in the new official trailer for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. As I said in my review of the trailer the other day, I thought the new footage gave us a great taste of what Nolan is bringing to the big screen, with the director tackling the fantastical head-on and every shot feeling loaded with the full weight of Odysseus' journey. It looks like it's going to be an epic film with commanding performances, bold visual storytelling, and narrative layers that make us want to revisit the film again and again. It got me fully on board with the adaptation, and I think it confidently showcased some of the biggest moments from Homer's epic in stunning fashion. But if you've already seen the new trailer for the film, then let me know down below in the comments section what you thought of all the new footage, alongside whether you picked out any other small details that link back to Homer's epic poem. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.